For several months, as of the making of this video, Israel has launched a horrific campaign of terror against the Palestinian people in both Gaza and the West Bank. The level of brutality is genuinely hard to comprehend. We are witnessing the destruction of an entire people and society, and this has continued with enthusiastic American support. As Marxists and anti-imperialists, it is our duty to take a step back and analyze the situation. It is crucial to understand the history and context of the Palestinian people. Today, I want to focus on the specific topic of Palestinian labor relations within the context of Zionist hegemony. Specifically, the way in which Palestinian labor is systematically exploited for the sake of Israel. Now, I could do this video in the format of listing out quotes and statistics and so on, but I think that would be rather boring. I think a more interesting way would be to analyze this alongside one of my favorite Arab films, Kafr Kassem. I think this can offer us a lot of insight. Kafr Kassem is a 1975 Syrian film about the life of Palestinian laborers in the Israeli-occupied village of Kafr Kassem, set in 1956 on the eve of the Israeli-Egypt Suez War. This is an openly socialist film. It doesn't hold back in its critique of colonialism and class oppression. It's very direct, which is refreshing in comparison to the vague and tepid anti-capitalism we see in modern media. This film offers solid insight into the condition of the Palestinian proletariat. I think a good place to start is a scene in which the Palestinian workers discuss the difference in pay they receive in comparison to their Israeli counterparts.
يلا يا شباب تعوقنا صارت الدنيا ظهر الله يلعن السهر اطلعوا على السيارة بسرعة
يا ريس الحالة مش موفية لما العمال الصهاينة بياخدوا 16 ليرة ليش احنا بناخد 7.5
ولك يا خي ليش بتكتر حكي بدكش بلاش
هو قادر يشتغل مقصر ومنين بنجيب تصاريح إذا رجع مش راضي علينا ما هم عاملين تصاريح مثل السيف فوق رقابنا
أخذوا أرضنا شغلونا فيها بالأجرة.
The Zionist worker gets 16 pounds a day. The Palestinian worker gets 7.5. Despite doing the exact same job and the exact same labor, the Zionist worker is compensated significantly more. This movie is over 40 years old, but the message remains perfectly true even today. According to the US government, the average daily wage in the West Bank is $32 and $13 in Gaza, compared to $82 in Israel. This is a bleak economic reality for Palestinians. They live under a racist occupation that is designed to disempower and impoverish them. This is a reality for all Palestinians. In 2021, the average Israeli income per year was about $42,000. The average Palestinian income was about $5,600. This means the average Israeli Jew makes more than 7 times as much as the average Palestinian in the West Bank or Gaza. This is one of the biggest income disparities in the entire world. In South Africa, for instance, the most unequal country in the world, whites make roughly 3 times more than their black counterparts. So, if Gaza and the West Bank, which are under Israeli occupation, and not considered to be a sovereign state by Israel, were counted in Israeli income statistics, then Israel would be by far the most unequal country in the entire world. Israel would make South Africa look like Maoist China in comparison. Now, let's go to another scene from the movie.
شلوكي لازم يكون طايح عمه انجليزي يا صهيوني بياخذ ليرتين على الراس لجيبته وليرة للمختار واحنا بنشتغل من مطلعها لمغيبها تنحصل ال7 ليرات ونص وهو بيطلع بال30 وال40 ليرة من دمنا وخبز اولادنا.
انت يا عاصي وجماعتك رح تصروا لنا الشر على الصبح بكفينا المصايب اللي جبتوا لنا اياها. علي الطلاق لولا كرامة المختار واجاويد هالبلد ما كنت باخذ واحد منكم.
يا ابن حليمة بكفي تهددنا كل يوم. انت مجبور تاخذنا لانك مش رايح تلاقي ارخص منا. رسم لي حالك من الصبح. الحاكم ما بيعطي التصاريح عشان سواد عينيك. بيعطيها لانه الخواجات بحاجة لعمال رخاص مثلنا. ولو انهم ملاقين غيرنا وبسعرنا ما بياخذونا. اسخ دود الخل منه فيه.
لو إننا بنقدر نعمل نقابة للعمال العرب لأنهم ما بيخلونا نفوت على هالسدروت كنا بنحدد ساعات العمل والسعر وبنحل مشاكل كثيرة.
نقابة للعمال العرب؟ كان نقابة قال الحاصله بدهاش زفرت لسان على الصبح.
The Palestinians are forced to labor on their own land for the sake of Israel, similar to the Africans under colonization laboring for the sake of Europe. This scene also demonstrates a great paradox in Zionist society. The Zionists utterly despise Palestinians as a people, but despite this utter hatred, Israel still requires an underclass of cheap labor, which the Palestinians have fulfilled. In Israel, for instance, a lot of the construction and agricultural work is traditionally done by Palestinian Arabs and not Israeli Jews. Number of Palestinian workers in Israel and Israeli settlements was an estimated 130,000 in 2019, according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, but is likely to be higher due to the number who cross into Israel without permits. Most Palestinians work in Israel's construction sector, where it is estimated they make up 65 to 70% of the workforce. Palestinians are an important aspect of the Israeli economy. They do the labor that most Israeli Jews are simply too rich to do. But of course, this is in heavy contention. The Zionists always feared that the Palestinian workers may pose a threat to Israeli security. This is part of the reason that Israel has slowly started to import more foreign workers, particularly from South Asia. They want a cheap labor force that has no connection to the land and won't risk rebellion. This leads us to another important question, which is Israeli solidarity with the Palestinians. Why is it that the so-called Israeli working class has absolutely no solidarity for the Palestinian people and can only hold them in contempt? This is a solidarity that can't be seen anywhere. It doesn't exist. The Israelis have no time for it. There's another great scene from Kafr Kassem that directly discusses this issue.
وبعد دخول السلاح السوفيتي للمنطقة، لكن إيش؟ إحنا واجبنا كحزبيين إنه نتصل بقيادتنا للمنطقة وننسق معاهم ونكت موقف.
نكفي. لازم نحكي بالطريقة اللي بنفكر فيها إحنا هون. بدناش ننتظر قرارات من برا. لازم إحنا نعمل إشي. تأميم منيح. عال، إحنا مع التأميم. بس أنا عندي ملاحظة من زمان وبدي أقولها. وبطلب من الرفيق سعيد إنه يسمح لي.
تفضل.
إذا كنا بننتظر من العمال الصهاينة إنهم يصفوا معنا، رايحين ننتظر كتير. هدول عندهم امتياز. وإحنا إيش في عندنا؟ نكابة ما في عندنا. بيستغلونا وهم محتاجين إلنا. ليش؟ لأنه إحنا أرخص. يا رفاق، ما في أي إشي بيربطنا معاهم طالما الصهاينة مسيطرين وعاملين طبقتين. يا رفاق، قدامنا طريق واحدة، التضامن مع حركة التحرر العربي. يعني العرب اللي راح يقاتلوا معانا وعلشاننا. اسمعوني مليح، اليوم يوم الاستعمار بمصر وبكرة يومه هون عندنا.
This is a great scene and addresses a fundamental issue that many Marxists are confused about. Some Marxists, perhaps with good intention, have the notion that the Israeli and Palestinian proletariat need to equally unite together. This notion is blind to the reality that the so-called Israeli proletariat simply don't want unity with the Palestinians. The national existence of Israel is predicated on the subjugation of the Palestinian people. The Israeli proletariat would rather have unity with the IDF than with the Palestinian struggle. To unite with the Palestinians would require giving up a great many colonial privileges, and they simply do not want to do that. They say that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and in a sense this is true. What Israel is doing, the Israeli people want. Don't take my word for it, you can ask Israelis themselves. According to the Israel Democracy Institute, over 80% of Israelis don't even think the civilian population of Gaza is worth consideration. Many also want the IDF to disregard international law altogether. According to another poll from Tel Aviv University, less than 2% of the respondents said they believed the Israeli Defense Force was using too much firepower. Perhaps even more horrifyingly, nearly 58% said they were using too little firepower. This is what the overwhelming majority of Israeli society think about Palestinians. Attempting to have unity with this is simply a joke. The Israeli proletariat simply do not care about Palestine. It would be great if ordinary Israelis were willing to oppose their government and oppose the destruction of Gaza, but unfortunately this isn't the reality. Palestinians didn't ask for these circumstances. It was imposed upon them. Palestinians can only unite with the Israelis as much as the Algerians were able to unite with the French, which is to say, not at all. Now, this takes us to one of the final scenes of the movie, the infamous massacre of Kafr Kassem, in which Palestinian laborers are murdered in cold blood by Israeli forces.
افضل النص يا كلب. من أي بلد أنتوا؟ كفر قاسم. كفر قاسم. كفر قاسم. كفر قاسم. كفر قاسم. كفر قاسم. كفر قاسم.
This scene depicts the very real massacre perpetrated against Palestinian laborers on October 29, 1956. The Palestinians were returning home from work in the Jordanian-controlled West Bank. Unknown to them, Israel had recently imposed a curfew that they were apparently violating. This gave the Israeli border police carte blanche to murder 47 Palestinians in cold blood. Despite the blatant massacre, it was quickly tucked under the rug in Israel. The perpetrators were given minimal punishment. 11 border policemen were eventually charged with crimes and 8 were convicted. Those who were imprisoned had their terms reduced. No one served more than 3.5 years in jail. This massacre was completely blatant, and with information later released, it's clear it was planned in advance. The transcript of Chaim Levy, who was a company commander, showed that there was a clear order to shoot Palestinians who broke the curfew without knowing about the change of its starting time. Levy also said, according to the court documents, he had been told by battalion commander Shmuel Melaniki, it is desirable that there be a number of casualties. This was actually depicted at the very beginning of Kafr Kassem, where an Israeli soldier at trial is open about his crimes and disdain for the Arabs without hesitation.
נכון.
האם החדירו לך במשך חייך שהערבים הם האויב שלנו?
כן.
האם הרגשה זו אצלך היא כלפי ערבי הארץ ומחוצה לה?
כן, אין שום הבדיל.
האם נכון שהרגשת שאם לא תבצע את הפקודה להרוג כל ערבי שאתה רואה מחוץ לביתו בכפר קאסם, שאתה בוגד בערכים אשר חונכת עליהם בצה"ל וביחידות משמר הגבול?
כן.
אילו היית הולך בימי המלחמה באחד מרחובות יפו למשל, והיית פוגש בערבי, האם היית יורה בו?
אינני יודע.
תודה.
מה היית?
Not only was this massacre completely and blatantly disregarded, it was also connected to a larger plan of expulsion. They wanted to transfer the village outside of Israel proper. Today, what we said from the first day was revealed. The shocking massacre of Kafr Kassem in 1956 was a deliberate murder, part of a plan to deport the residents of the Triangle. The published protocols prove that Israel not only murdered 50 Arab citizens in cold blood, but also planned the establishment of pens and the transfer of the people, not only in 1948, but also under the military regime in the 1950s, she said. The massacre of Kafr Kassem is important to understand in the greater context that the Nakba did not end in 1948. The system of Zionist expulsion and displacement has continued to this day, as we are seeing in Gaza. This is a core aspect of the Zionist movement. This is everything that they have ever stood for. Kafr Kassem is the representative of Israel.
تل أبيب زي كفر قاسم بالنسبة لناس مثل حكايتنا. العربي وين ما راح بيضل عربي. يعني يا بيحتقروه يا بيخافوا منه. وبالحالتين ما بيقدر يرتاح.
The existence of the Palestinian people, unless they fully renounce their history and identity, can never be at peace with Zionism. For as long as the Palestinians can never forget Deir Yassin, Kafr Kassem, Sabra and Shatila, or Gaza, for as long as the Palestinians can never forget their land, they have no other option but to resist. This is not the history that they wanted, this is the history that has been forced upon them. Thank you all for watching. Free Palestine.
كفر قاسم. إنني عدت من الموت لأحيا لأغني، فدعيني أستعر صوتي من جرح توهج، وأعينيني على الحقد الذي يزرع في قلبي عوسج. إنني مندوب جرح لا يقاوم لا يساوم. إنني مندوب جرح لا يساوم. علمتني ضربة الجلاد أن أمشي على جرحي وأمشي ثم أمشي وأقاوم. محمود درويش.